Hello and welcome to one and all. In this class, we'll continue with the poverty in India. So in the previous class, I've explained to you what is the meaning of poverty and what are the various types of poverty, absolute and relative poverty. So absolute poverty, when a person is not able to consume even the basic necessities of life. That is, if a person is living below the subsistence consumption, considering certain quantities of cereals, pulses, milk, egg, butter, etc. So if a person is not able to consume that much amount of, in terms of calories, 2,400 calories per person per day in the rural areas and 2,400 calories per person per day in the urban areas. So if a person's consumption expenditure is below that, because he's not even earning that much amount of money income, so that he is forced to live below the subsistence consumption. So then that person is considered to be absolutely poor. And this type of absolute poverty, this is absolute poverty, and this type of poverty is existing in all the developing countries, including India. Whereas in the case of developed countries, they are having something called as a relative poverty. So the relative poverty is compared to the other person. This person might be poorer than the other person. So we are making the comparison with, for example, the top 5 to 10%. What is their level of living? What is their income compared to that the next 5 to 10% or the bottom 5 to 10%? So they are relatively poorer than the top 5 to 10%. So even though they are all above the poverty line, they are relatively poorer than the another person whose income is higher than this person. So this kind of poverty, relative poverty, is prevailing in the developed countries. Okay. So now let us move on to what is the incidence of poverty in India. Meaning, let us check out. Based on the data, what is the extent of poverty in our country? Okay. So there is estimate starting from 1973-74. So actual estimates of poverty were carried on by the government of India. I mean, by the Planning Commission on behalf of the government of India. They started the estimates of poverty based on the consumption expenditure that has to be incurred to consume a minimum calorie intake. Okay. And over a period of time, according to the price changes, they kept on updating what should be that consumption expenditure. See, for example, according to the estimates provided by the Planning Commission, at 1973-74 prices. So in the previous class, I explained what are all the steps involved to identify how much percentage of the population are absolutely poor, isn't it? So first we have to find out what are all the what do you mean by the nutritional diet requirement, and in order to purchase that much amount of nutritional diet, how much expenditure a person has to incur. So at 1973-74 prices, in order to consume that much amount of nutritional diet per day, a person has to prices how much they have to spend to consume the minimum nutritional diet this is also called as a poverty line, which is the poverty line. So at 1973-74 prices, the consumption expenditure happens to be rupees 49.63 per person, that is per capita, per month in rural areas. So what is that? That is that in order to consume that 2400 calories in rural area, a person living in the rural area has to spend approximately 49 rupees 63 paise per month, so that he will be able to consume that 2400 calories per day. Okay. And the same thing, 2100 calories in urban area, the person has to spend approximately 56.64 per month in urban areas. So this is in at 1973-74 prices, whatever the prices prevailing in 1973-74. So based on the, as per the survey conducted in 1973-74, it was found out that as per the survey, nearly 56.4% were not able to spend this 49.63 per month. So with the 56.4% were below the poverty line in rural areas. And nearly 49% in the urban areas, they were not able to spend this rupees 56 rupees 64 paise. So 49% were below the poverty line in urban areas. So you can see the extra, almost half the percentage in both the rural and urban areas were below the poverty line. So this was in 1973-74. So the total percentage happens to be both rural and urban put together. Nearly 56% of the population are below the poverty line in India. That is more than half the percentage of population in India were below the poverty line in 1973-74. So that is more than half the percentage of population were not able to spend this required consumption expenditure to meet the required amount of calories. So that much percentage of the population were below the poverty line in India in 1973-74. Just remember, in spite of the fact that we have already 1973-74 means almost 2 decades were over after the planning process was started. So in spite of this is after attaining the independence, and after starting the planning process, 20 years after starting the planning process, more than half the percentage of the population were below the poverty line. Okay. Then moving on to the recent figures, that is year wise, the what should be required in the consumption basket keeps changing, and it is all adjusted according to the changes in prices. See, whatever that 49.63 rupees or 56.64 rupees in the urban area is not going to fetch us anything now, isn't it? So in order to consume the same amount of calories, how much a person should consume in present day, isn't it? So according to the changes in the prices, it will be the consumption expenditure will be updated by the planning commission or any agency that is making the survey. Okay, so let us move on to the fast forward it, and let us check out what was the as per the latest census. Let's find out what is the poverty data in the country. Okay, so at 2011-12 prices, so the same amount of nutritional diet it requires. So the poverty line is determined as, so rupees 816 per capita. So 49 per rupees in 1973-74. Now it is 816 rupees per capita per month in rural areas. And that 56 rupees, which was in 1973-74, it has increased to 1000 rupees. So this 1000 rupees, 816 rupees also, you might be, it's a very, very bare minimum consumption expenditure required to meet the poverty line. Okay, this would be in the urban areas. So based on, according to this prices, this consumption expenditure, it was found out that, so based on these estimates of consumption expenditure, it was found out that nearly 25.70% of the population in rural areas, and so it was 56% in 1973-74. So as a percentage wise, it has decreased to 25% in 2011-2012, and nearly 13.70% in urban areas, which was 49% in 1973-74, reduced to 13% in 2011-12. Urban areas were found to be below the poverty line. So for the country as a whole, both rural and urban areas put together, the total percentage for the country as a whole, it comes around to approximately 22%. So it is 21.92%. So you can round about it. So finally, this is the poverty level in the country as of 2011 and 12. So which was 56% in 1973-74, isn't it? So 56% in 1973-74 reduced to 22% in 2011 and 12. See, we all will be little bit enthusiastic, little bit excited to know about, or some kind of consolation to know that the poverty levels has decreased almost half the percentage. From 56%, it has reduced to 22%. But then let me put it out. See, it is only in the form of percentages. When you calculate in terms of absolute numbers, we are not finding that much decrease in the levels of poverty. See, for example, let us check it out in absolute number. What was the total population in India in 1973-74? Remember? So the total population of India in 1971, this was 548 million. So 54.6% of that one is approximately coming to, so almost like 56%. It's approximately coming to, let us make it roundabout figures. So more than half the percentage, isn't it? So 56%. So roughly it is coming around 300 million approximately. Okay. Now the total population in 2011, 1210 million. So 22% of that is approximately around 265 million. So finally what we are observing, in 1971, 300 million people were poor, and in 2011 It has decreased only to 265 million, or in other words, even today, nearly more than 200 to 50 million of the population in the country are below the poverty line. So from 300 million to 265 million, it is not that much decrease. But when you look at in the form of a percentage, maybe it is, well, it sounds as if that half the percentage of the population have come and one, I mean, above the poverty line. It is not like that. So because of the continuous rise in the population, the absolute number of poor people is not decreasing that much. Maybe in terms of percentages, it is decreasing. So finally, it is, in spite of all the efforts done by the government, still the conclusion is that still more than 250 million of the people, 250 million in the country are below the poverty line, which doesn't sound very good, isn't it? So anyway, this is the incidence of poverty in India. Okay, let's move on to the next concept, next indicator, which measures something called as the poverty gap index. So the poverty gap index is basically, it measures what is the intensity of poverty or the depth of poverty. That is one thing. So once we find, if the government finds out what is the depth of poverty, the area wise, then accordingly, I mean, the suitable remedial measures can be devised by the government. So that is the intention of knowing what is the poverty gap index. So when I say the depth of poverty or the intensity of poverty, this is also in a way the relative to what extent one person is better off than the another person. See, a person consuming 2 square meals a day is relatively better than a person who is able to consume only 1 square meal a day. A person who is consuming 1 square full meals a day is relatively better than another person who is not able to consume even one full square meals a day, isn't it? So the poverty, the levels or the extent or the depth or the intensity of poverty is not same for everyone. So some person is extremely poor, some person is just very poor, some person is just poor, another person is mildly poor, isn't it? So there are different categories of poorness in the country. So the if we know that what is the extent of poverty a family is undergoing. See, we had one index called as the multi-dimensional poverty index. If you remember, in what are all the areas, in what are all the dimensions a family or a household is deprived of that basic facilities. So the same thing, a person out of the 10 or 10 or 15 indicators, a person might be able to meet maybe 7 or 8 indicators. The remaining he might not be able to meet. Another family may be able to meet 12 indicators, but the remaining 3 or 4 might not be able to meet. Isn't it? So this is what is known as the intensity of poverty. It ranges from one person to another person. It ranges from one family to another family. It ranges from one state to another state. It ranges from one country to another country. To put it very simply, the extent of poverty is not the same for each and every person. Everybody is, you cannot categorize everyone generally saying, okay, all these people are poor, so we will devise one program which will benefit to all of them. It is not like that. So a person who is not even able to meet even 1 square meals a day, at least the government should try to provide some income earning opportunities so that he will be able to consume at least 1 square meals a day. A person who is able to consume 2 square meals a day, that much another additional extra only the government has to provide, isn't it? So this gap index, it measures the extent of poverty, and also it enables the government to provide the remedial measures according to the gap. Okay, for example, to put it meaning is, the poverty gap index is a measure of the intensity or depth of poverty. Okay, that is considering how far on an average the poor are from that poverty line. Okay, if you have to define, it is defined as the average poverty gap in the population as a proportion of the poverty line. See, this is the formula. Okay, the same formula is being in the form of sentences. Proportion of the poverty line. So the formula is the same thing I'm writing in the form of a formula. That is poverty gap, which is represented by the letter G, is equal to, what is it? The average poverty gap in the population as a proportion of the poverty line. So this is the gap. So first you're talking about the what is the poverty line. So poverty line minus, see for example we are taking 1200 calories or 2100 or 2000 calories, how much should we have just now we have checked, isn't it? 1000 rupees or 816 rupees. So that is the poverty line. And average consumption expenditure of the poor divided by poverty line. So this is what, this is a formula, this is what written in the form of sentences as a proportion of the poverty line. Okay, so this is the formula to calculate the poverty line, poverty gap index. Okay, so let me give you with a numerical example so that you'll be able to understand it better. So let us take G is equal to, so poverty line, let us take 1000 rupees. So just now we have seen, isn't it, in some data, 1000 rupees is the urban consumption expenditure to meet the required calorie intake. So 1000 is the poverty line now. 1000 rupees is the poverty line. Okay. Now average consumption expenditure. Suppose if the person instead of 1000 rupees, he is spending only 800 because his consumption, his income is low. He is not able to spend 1000. He is spending only 800. So divided by poverty line again 1000. So how much it comes to? It comes to approximately 200 divided by 1000 is equal to, this is 0.2, isn't it? Now let us take another person. So G is equal to, so 1000. Another person is able to not even 800. So one family is able to at least spend 800 rupees. Another family is not even able to spend 800 rupees also. It is able to spend only 600 rupees. Apply the same thing. So now what is happening here? So 400 divided by 1000 is equal to 0.4. Now you understand. So this person is the family which is spending 0.2 is relatively the gap is lesser compared to the from the poverty line. What is how much you are spending? That is the gap, isn't it? So here the gap is more because he's spending only 600 rupees. Compare relative to this person, the gap is less compared to, I mean, compared to the person who is spending only 600, this gap is less. So the government cannot devise the same policies for the person who is spending 800 rupees and for the person who is spending 600 rupees. So different policies have to be, first what the government has to do, this person also, the person who is spending 600, this person also should be able to spend 800, so that the gap, this also will reduce to 0.2, and this person should be, it should be 0, so that this person income earning capacity should be raised, so that he is going to meet, it will be 1000 minus 1000. Okay, So he will be raised to poverty level, and this person may be slightly improved. Understand? So like that, different categories of people, their poorness ranges, the intensity keeps on ranging. Okay. Accordingly, the government has to devise the programs so that they will be able to meet the poverty line. See, in the previous class, I explained one of the remedial measures for income inequalities. There was one point, resource and income allocation. If you remember, resource and income earning of it. So I mentioned to you, resource the agricultural laborers, they are not having any land at all. See, the agricultural laborers are worse than the small farmers and the marginal farmers. Small farmers and marginal farmers, they are having at least a piece of land. But these agricultural laborers, they don't have any land at all. So for those kind of people, the government first has to provide some kind of resource. For the other small and marginal farmers, some technical assistance, financial assistance should be, they need not have to provide maybe some additional land, or with the amount of land which they are having, some technical assistance, some financial assistance, some inputs in the form of seeds, fertilizers. So like that, if the government provides, they will be able to cultivate. But for these people, the agricultural labor, the land itself has to be provided. So the government cannot provide, for example, for the agricultural laborers, if the government decides to provide seeds and fertilizers, will it help them? It will not help them. The seeds and fertilizers is going to help only the small farmers and marginal farmers. But for the the landless laborers, they need a land. If the government just provides the seeds and fertilizers commonly for everyone, for all the farmers, small farmers, categorizing everyone as the small farmers, and provides the financial assistance in the form to purchase seeds and fertilizers, that is not going to help the landless agricultural laborers. So the government has to devise a separate program for the landless agricultural laborers and the small and marginal farmers who are having a certain acres or areas of land. Understand? So different programs have to be devised according to the intensity of poverty in each and every section of the population. So this can also be the individual family, or for example, let us assume that this is the poverty levels in the state of Telangana. Okay. So on the whole, then you will find out, the government can find out of the, you can, this is the national poverty line. So as a proportion of the in India, now we are saying total in India, 22% or the, or approximately 265 million are poor. Only in Telangana, what is the percentage of poverty? Okay, that can be found out. And based on this index, some remedial measures can be provided in the state of Telangana. So that remedial measures are slightly different from another state. Let us take, this is Assam. In Assam, the poverty level is even, it is more severe. So whatever the measures that are adopted in Telangana, the same measure cannot be adopted in Assam, because their intensity is even more severe. So the government has to devise what are the other extra measures they have to provide to the people, so that they will also reach the, come above the poverty line. Understood now? So like that, each and every state, based on this, the government will find out what is the extent of poverty in each and every state, and what is the depth of poverty, and how much is the percentage of that poverty in each and every state. And accordingly, the government is devising the measure so that they will be coming above the poverty line. To put it very in a graphical way, to make you people understand, let us assume this is the poverty line. Okay. So now this is where 0.2, let us assume, just now we have said 0.2. This is in the state of Telangana, and this is in the state of Assam. This is the this is the average. They have to come to this level. And now let us assume this is in the state of Bihar. Okay. So now this, the percentage of, how much, let us assume like 20% or in Telangana poor, 40% in the state of Assam are poor like this, and 50% in the state of Bihar. So this is easier, isn't it? Telangana, the programs, whatever, some programs they have to initiate so that these people will reach the poverty line above. So again, these people also, the state of Assam also, they have to reach to the poverty. The programs are different. Bihar also, they have to come above the poverty line. Understood? So the program, this is show the depth. Here the depth is more. So based on this depth and the percentage of poverty in each and every state, the government can provide the measure so that everyone will come above the poverty, and the whole, all the states in the country should come above the poverty line. So this is what the poverty gap index measures. Okay, the formula in terms of I wrote in words. It is G is equal to Z minus Y divided by Z. That is the poverty line minus average consumption expenditure divided by poverty line. Okay, so I hope the concept is clear. And apart from that, we all know that some other poverty measures like the Human Development Report, the United Nations released another poverty index, so which we already discussed, the Human Poverty Index. We already discussed, isn't it? Human Poverty Index, and another one, the multi-dimensional poverty index. So these are all the other uh, poverty indexes that are helping to uh, find out the extent of poverty in a country. So totally the poverty that we have, the absolute poverty, relative poverty. These are the indicators: relative poverty, poverty gap index, and human poverty index, and multi-dimensional poverty index. So these are all the 5 indices to measure the uh, extent of poverty in a country. Okay, hope the concept is clear to all of you. So the next class, I'll continue with the what are all the causes and consequences of poverty in India. Okay, so if you find this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any doubts or suggestions, please don't fail to mention in the comment box. Okay, until my next class, next video, take care. Bye bye.